This week, I drew the unlucky straw and I'm behind the wheel of the new Fiat 500e, an electric take on an iconic Cinquecento shape. Now, I do say unlucky because I'm 194 centimeters tall, and this right here is about the smallest car on sale in Australia. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's go and find out if this little electric Italian hatchback can change my opinion. The Fiat 500e is offered in Australia in a single high specification model grade called La Prima, and it costs $52,500 before on-road costs. It's now electric only as well. In place of the old tiny petrol engine is a tiny electric motor which powers the front wheels. Outputs are 87 kilowatts and 220 newton meters, which is fed by a 42 kilowatt hour battery array. Fiat says it'll travel 311 kilometers on a charge, and it'll take just over 30 minutes to charge from 0 to 80% at a maximum rate of 85 kilowatts. It's priced on par with longer range and larger electric car rivals such as the BYD Atto 3 and Hyundai Kona Electric. Buyers could also opt for the sportier Abarth 500e electric hot hatch, which is closer to the $60,000 price barrier. As for the 500e La Prima, it's pricey for such a small car, especially considering it's about twice the price of its petrol-powered predecessor. Specs-wise, it gets a 10.25-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a panoramic sunroof, front and rear parking sensors, eco man-made leather, and heated front seats. Where the old car was cheap and cheerful, this car relies far more on its electric underpinnings and an ingrained sense of style to push it closer to the premium end of the spectrum. Thankfully, the brand has kept the iconic styling of the original. It's still bubble-shaped using short overhangs at the front and rear, and these cute big headlights are accented by these eyelash DRLs. There are lashings of chrome trim down the sides. This car sports a set of sunken door handles, and it has 17-inch alloy wheels. On the other side of the rear haunch sits a CCS charge connector in place of the regular fuel filler, and you can see traditional Fiat 500 taillights at the back. Lift the rear hatch up and this car fits in 185 litres with the rear seats up. Now drop those down and it expands to 550 litres. Now, two things I do want to mention is the fact that the charge cable handily fits underneath the boot floor, but this tyre repair kit does not. Unfortunately as well, this car doesn't have any front storage underneath the bonnet like some other EVs in the market can do. Well, folding my 6'4" self inside the cabin of this Fiat 500e isn't the simplest procedure, but it fares far better than its predecessor did, and that's saying something. It's actually a nice, light and airy space once you're inside the cabin, and it totally matches the Fiat 500e's laid-back character. First of all, in terms of space, you've got a decent amount of adjustability between the seats and the steering wheel to get a nice driving position. This now is tilt and reach adjustable, which is one up on its predecessor. And in terms of storage, you've got a lidded center console bin down here, which paves way to a big cavity, a bigger cavity even down here with a USB-C and USB-A port, as well as a 12-volt charger. And then up here, you've got a wireless phone charger as well. You'll note that this car doesn't have a transmission tunnel, which means that the driver and passenger have a bit of a void between them, which is kind of nice as well. Materials use is not this car's strong suit, which is a shame considering the expensive purchase price. These door cards here are covered in a hard plastic, and so is the dash top, and that's particularly annoying if you like resting your elbow on the door card like me. The seats here are covered in a man-made leather fabric, which actually smells a little bit funny, but I'd imagine that subsides the longer you own the car. Fiat has also included some cool Easter eggs like this Fiat inscribed stitching on the seat here, and you'll also see little Made in Torino motifs inside the door pulls. I had a bit of trouble early on with this 10.25-inch infotainment screen, which displayed a little bit laggy and also wouldn't connect up my Bluetooth or wireless Apple CarPlay. However, that seems to have resolved itself, and it's a fairly simple system to get your head around. It has digital radio and native satellite navigation, which is easily accessed using these shortcuts on the side of the screen. In front of the driver, you've got a digital instrument cluster as well, which handles things like navigation, song information, of course EV data, and also economy information as well. I'm not going to do myself the indecency of getting in the back seat. You can see how tiny it is back. Fine, I'll give it a go. So follow me through. All right, here we are getting in the back seat of the 500e, 194 centimeters. I can't even lock this seat back. It's that tight in the back here. There we go. Christ almighty, it's tight in the back seat here. I don't have any headroom whatsoever. My knees are side straddled like this. Not a really good place to be whatsoever, but the option is there if you're in an emergency. First impressions with the Fiat 500e, well, those numbers I suggested earlier, 87 kilowatts and 220 newton meters, they didn't sound like a whole lot on paper, but once you're actually behind the wheel, this car certainly feels perky and it's got a bit of acceleration to it once you lean into the throttle. It doesn't even matter what speed you're at, whether you're pulling away from a set of lights or you're doing a bit of a freeway overtake. This car has the ability to sort of be sprightly and be spontaneous, and it is really, really responsive overall. One thing that you might be able to hear though is there's a fair amount of road noise inside this car. It's a small cabin, there's not a lot of sound insulation, and I'm hearing a lot of tyre noise and wind noise when you're on the freeway. It's not the nicest experience, especially when you're paying roughly $55,000 to drive away. Yeah, that's a bit of a hard pill to swallow. On the other end of the spectrum, the brakes, and it actually has a decent amount of stopping power for such a small car. There's been a couple of times this week when I've been driving it on the freeway and I've had to pull up very quickly, and you stand on the brakes and it's very, very bitey and grabby, and the exact sort of response that you want from a brake pedal. Ride comfort. This car is not the nicest car to drive around town. It sort of feels those hard edges and potholes and that sort of thing. They transmit their way through to the cabin, and it's really not that nice of experience, especially considering the price you pay. This 500e La Prima does have its own set of active safety systems, and two I've appreciated this week in particular are its adaptive cruise control system, which also includes lane centering. Now that on the freeway does a very decent job of keeping a good gap to the car ahead, and it also keeps you very tightly within your lane. Now, the one other system I've come to appreciate is the autonomous emergency braking system, and it really feels well attuned to its surroundings and pulls you up right behind the car that's stopped suddenly ahead. In terms of fuel efficiency, should I say electric efficiency, this car is doing 14.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is bang on Fiat's claim. I've also seen even better numbers throughout my week with the car. It's been down as low as 12 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is right up there with some of the most efficient electric vehicles on our market. The 500e has three distinct driving modes. First of all, you've got normal, which we're driving in at the moment. Then you've got range, which prioritizes range of the vehicle, obviously. And then you've got one called Sherpa, which is designed to turn off all unnecessary things, be it climate control. It even limits your speed to 80 kilometers per hour. So that should be used in only the utmost emergencies. You can see me right now doing a U-turn, and that leads me into another thing. This car is super maneuverable, and being such a small car overall, you get a really good vision out of the cabin. You can see all around you. It is a very handy car to have around town. However, while I say that it is a nice and maneuverable car, one thing that really does annoy me are these button shifters. They are very difficult to use, and you often have to press them twice in order for the car to register what gear it needs to be in at any given moment. So that is really hard for doing 3-point turns and that sort of thing, reverse parks. Super annoying. Also on the downside, I have nowhere to put my left foot. This car doesn't have a dead pedal, and it feels like I'm so constrained inside this cabin. There's not a lot of room to move about whatsoever. To be fair though, I am 194 centimeters tall, and probably not this car's key market, but there you go. Finally, one last thing that's kind of irked me this week is the indicator stalk. It doesn't always register turning left or right. So I use it now, it's fine, but when you do that halfway press, it doesn't always register, and you can often change lanes without indicating, which is bad. The Fiat 500e is a cool electric adaptation of an Italian classic. I love the styling and design, I'm a fan of its perky driving dynamics, and it remains super efficient for a small car as well. But this thing here is a nichest of niche plays and will only appeal to a few select buyers. Its price tag leaves you scratching your head, and arguably that is the biggest deterrent to this car's success overall. It does have charming appeal, that's for sure, but in my opinion, it'll only find favour with a select few fanatics. Now, if you've enjoyed this video or you've learnt something interesting about the Fiat 500e, be sure to give us a like, stay subscribed to stay up to date with all of our future content, and if you want to know more about the full Fiat 500e review, go to Drive.com.au.